After watching Marlon Brando in The Godfather, you likely think he is one of the best actors in an amazing movie, so it was surprising to fans when they learnt that Brando wasn't happy with some of his co-stars. It's a big question for fans. How did the cast of The Godfather manage to work together despite not liking each other? Let's explore why Marlon Brando never forgave some of his co-stars. How did Marlon Brando never forgave some of his co-stars for gender stereotype despite never liking each other more than anybody else? When Marlon Brando starred as Vito Corleone in the film adaptation of Mario Puzo's book, he fully became the fearsome mafia boss. This change seemed effortless because Brando had a rebellious nature in real life. He often rejected rules, challenged authority, and struggled with personal issues, which made it difficult for him to find acting jobs. As a result, he felt like an outsider who had a tough upbringing. Brando had a challenging family life, filled with tragedies that added to his mysteriousness. From a young age, he was connected to the entertainment industry, especially acting, which seemed natural for him since his mother was a stage actress and his father was a traveling salesman. Sadly, his parents' influence was not just about creativity. They could not provide a stable and supportive home for their children. His father was often away, and when he was home, he didn't provide much support. Brando's dad was abusive, making life difficult for his wife and kids. Brando's mom often drank to cope. As kids, Brando and his sisters had to search local bars to find her and bring her home when she was drunk. This situation hurt Brando's already troubled relationship with his dad, filling him with anger that he held on to for a long time. Brando's first lesson on authority didn't go well, so he started using his talent for mimicking others to play pranks. This earned him a reputation as a troublemaker. His parents' separation, although they later got back together, didn't help his behavior. While he was doing well in sports and drama, he struggled in school and had to repeat a year. During his teenage years, Brando continued to misbehave at school, which ultimately got him expelled. He was well liked in school because he loved drama, even though he didn't do well in his studies. It was obvious he was talented at acting. After high school, Brando went to Shattuck Military Academy, the same school his father went to, but he quickly rebelled against the rules. He got in trouble for not listening to an officer during training and was put on probation. Even when he was punished and kept on campus, he snuck into town and got caught. This caused the school's faculty to vote for his expulsion, but many students stood by him. He thought expulsion was a harsh punishment, and even though the academy asked him to come back the next year, he decided to drop out of high school instead. After leaving Shattuck, he worked a summer job digging ditches. He wanted to join the army, but when he tried to enlist, he was disqualified because he failed the physical exam due to a knee injury he got while playing football at Shattuck. This injury made him unfit for military service, ending his plans to join the army. After not getting into the army, 18-year-old Brando moved to New York City to pursue acting, like his sisters had done. One of his sisters noted his choice as he was involved in a school play that he really enjoyed. Because of this, he decided to study acting in New York, as it was the only thing he liked. He enrolled at the American Theater Wing Professional School and learnt from a famous German director who helped shape Brando's acting style. During his early months in New York, Brando faced many challenges, especially with money. He lived with friends to get by. But he was happy to do it because he wanted to act. A friend said that acting made him feel accepted in New York for the first time, as people appreciated his talent instead of judging him, which he often faced during his difficult childhood. Brando worked hard with his teacher, Stella Adler, who recognized his natural talent and keen sense of realism. Early in his training, it was obvious that he had an amazing ability to understand a character's point of view. Brando later denied being a method actor and criticized others who used that approach. After starting in summer stock theater in Long Island, New York, he became known for his unpredictable and rebellious behavior. This led to him being kicked out of a local new school production. Despite this, he was recognized in another local performance. Play in Seville. After his Broadway debut, the New York drama critics named him most promising young actor for his performance as a troubled veteran in Truckline Cafe. Though the play was not a success, while some critics accused him of being difficult fellow actors, often said his methods were simply part of his craft, helping him deliver authentic and groundbreaking performances in the next project he embarked on. He had a poor audition, but still landed the job during the pre-Broadway tour. Brando was older and had a drinking problem like Brando's mother clashed with him. She said he was a great young actor when he wanted to be, but most of the time I couldn't even hear him on the stage. Brando showed his disregard for this project by behaving badly on stage, according to a stage manager, picking his nose. After a few weeks, Brando was eventually fired. This turned out to be a great opportunity for him, as it allowed him to take the role of Stanley Kowalski in the film A Streetcar Named Desire. A co-star Brando had worked with even turned down a role in A Streetcar Named Desire, but gave him a harsh but strong recommendation for the role of Stanley. She wrote a letter saying, "I know of an actor who can play this brutish Stanley Kowalski character, a total pig of a man with no sensitivity or grace. Brando would be perfect. I just fired him for my play The Eagle Has Two Heads, and I know for a fact he is looking for work." However, after getting the role, critics were less impressed. One review said Brando was still building his character and didn't make an impact. Brando's first film role was in The Men, where he played a bitter paraplegic veteran. He spent a month in bed at the Birmingham Army Hospital in Venice to prepare for the role. The New York Times critic Bosley Crowder praised Brando's performance, saying, "He was so vivid, dynamic, and sensitive that it felt completely real." It was around this time that the Korean War began, and Brando, who had already done surgery on his knee, was no longer Brando, went to the induction center and told the doctor he had mental health issues. He had been expelled from military school and had problems with authority. The psychiatrist happened to know a doctor friend of Brando's, which helped him avoid serving in the Korean War. Instead, he focused on acting in movies. To help with his lines, Brando used cue cards instead of memorizing them. Even though many directors did not like this, Brando believed it made his performances feel more natural, and he thought that memorizing his lines would just make him sound like he was repeating what the writer wrote. He said using cue cards made it look like his character was figuring out what to say instead of just reciting memorized lines. Some co-stars thought Brando used the cards because he was lazy or couldn't remember his lines. After playing Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire, he earned his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor, and that role is still seen as one of his best. The next year, he was nominated again for his role in Viva Zapata, a movie about the Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata. The film depicted Zapata's simple beginnings, his rise to power in the early 1900s, and his death. In his next film, Julius Caesar, he received great reviews for playing Mark Antony. While many praised his talent, some critics thought his mumbling and unique style showed he lacked basic acting skills. When he was cast, many were unsure if he would do well, but Brando delivered a strong performance. One of the producers was so impressed that he offered Brando a full season at the Hammersmith Theater, but he turned it down. A critic praised Brando's performance, saying it was like heat radiating from a furnace. Brando, however, didn't think much of his work in the film and called it silly, showing his typical self-criticism. He then starred in The Wild One, riding his own Triumph Thunderbird 60 motorcycle. The movie was about motorcycle gangs taking control. The small town was known for its violent content, which led to criticism from Time magazine. They said the movie just tried to create excitement. Reports also mentioned that Marlon Brando had conflicts with the Hungarian director Lo Bened and his co-star Lee Marvin. Despite the tensions, their film was a big hit, inspiring teenage rebellion and making Brando a role model for the new rock and roll generation. Alongside stars like James Dean and Elvis Presley, eventually Brando's talent earned him an Oscar. Marlon Brando played Terry Malloy in the movie On the Waterfront, and his performance received a lot of praise, especially for his connection with Eva Marie Saint and direction by Elia Kazan. Brando's acting was celebrated for its emotional depth. He worked with Kazan to make changes to the original script, such as a scene where his character had a gun pointed at him by his brother Charlie. Brando felt that Terry wouldn't really believe his brother would do that. Kazan agreed to make changes, which happened often. He later praised Brando, saying his performance blended toughness and gentleness, and called it the best ever by an American actor. This was a big compliment from his director. Others also praised Brando, who won the Academy Award for Best Actor for On the Waterfront. The film was successful, making over $4 million in North America, and critics, including one from the New York Times, recognized its impact. The New York Times praised the film as powerful and exciting. Roger Ebert later called it one of the most important films in American cinema, adding it to his great films list. Despite the praise, Brando was dismissive of his performance, saying that after seeing the film, he felt like a huge failure. Perhaps Brando was just hard on himself and demanded more from everyone, including himself. He even had a tense relationship with his co-star Frank Sinatra, and this desire for perfection earned him a nomination for Brando, made more films, and teamed up with Paramount to start his own production company called Pennebaker. He wanted to make films that would have a positive impact on the world. He named the company after his mother, who had died earlier, and her loss deeply affected him since she was the one person whose approval he valued. After she passed away, Brando appeared to lose interest in things. He even put his father in charge of Pennebaker so he could belittle him. The first film directed by Marlon Brando was One-Lie Jacks. Initially, Stanley Kubrick was the director, but he was replaced early in production. Brando, who was also the star, directed the film himself. He was known for taking many takes and really diving into the characters, which he also applied to directing. This approach led to the film taking longer and costing more than expected. Paramount thought it would take 3 months and cost around $3 million, but it ended up taking 6 months and costing over $6 million. Brando also didn't have much experience with editing. Also delayed the film's post-production. Eventually Paramount took control of the project. Brando's issue with the film industry continued to escalate during the filming of the movie Mutiny on the Bounty. He was accused of deliberately causing problems with almost every part of the production. It was reported in an article titled $6 Million Down the Drain, The Mutiny of Marlon Brando. Here what the director, Louis Milestone, said: the studio deserved what they got when they gave a ham actor. A young actor had a lot of power over an expensive movie, which almost made MGM go broke. Although there were other delays besides Marlon Brando's behavior, the negative reputation stuck with him. Studios became worried about working with him, and critics began to notice that he was gaining weight. As things changed, Brando started to focus more on making his personal life better, lost interest in his acting career, and began to see acting mainly as a way to earn money. Many people criticized how Brando felt disappointed because he didn't fully take on better roles, even when he was eager to work with his idol, Charlie Chaplin. Brando found the experience frustrating because Chaplin was very controlling and strict as a director. At one point, Brando acknowledged that his career was not in great shape. He mentioned that some of the films he made in the 1960s did well, while others did not. For example, he took on some projects like The Night of the Following Day just for the money, while he had mixed feelings about others like Candy. I decided to take the job because a friend asked me, and I didn't want to refuse. I often think of my middle years as a time when I didn't achieve much. By the 1970s, Marlon Brando was seen as a star who couldn't attract audiences anymore, and it seemed like his career was over. However, Robert Evans, the head of Paramount Pictures, gave Mario Puzo money up front to write The Godfather, ensuring the studio would own the movie rights. They initially wanted to make The Godfather as a low-budget film with no famous actors and set in modern times, but the book was extremely popular. Success allowed Evans to make a big film. He knew that Paramount's last mafia movie, The Brotherhood, did poorly at the box office because its Jewish director, Martin Reed, and star Kirk Douglas didn't connect with the Italian theme. After many famous directors declined the project, Evans chose Francis Ford Coppola, who was Italian-American and cost-effective. Coppola had several actors in mind for the lead role in The Godfather, including Ernest Borgnine and Frank Sinatra, but ultimately he chose the best actor, focusing on Laurence Olivier or Marlon Brando. When Coppola wanted Brando, the studio was worried about his past reputation and previous box office failures. Paramount's president, Stanley Jaffe, strongly disagreed with casting Brando, however, after Coppola persuaded Brando to do a makeup screen test, the studio finally agreed. Brando was given the role of Vito Corleone in The Godfather, which changed his career. He was cast for a low fee. He was paid $50,000 and also got a share of the film's profits, which turned out to be more valuable for the cast later on. The director Coppola originally wanted Burt Reynolds for the role of Michael Corleone in The Godfather, but Marlon Brando didn't want him. Brando said he would quit the movie if Reynolds was cast, so Coppola chose Al Pacino instead. Brando's dislike for Reynolds stemmed from past events, especially when Reynolds made fun of Brando's style on The Twilight Zone. Reynolds, who didn't like being compared to Brando, eventually returned to Brando, and suddenly the events are playing out in the same Best Actor Oscar. Brando wins the top 10, winning a second Best Actor Oscar, even though he didn't win for The Godfather. Reynolds had a successful movie that year too, but the rivalry continued. Brando insulted Reynolds, calling him vain and criticizing how he acted. Later, Reynolds got back at Brando by making fun of him on Saturday Night Live, but in interviews, Reynolds stayed calm. He minimized the conflict, feeling honored by Brando's response. Brando's connections with people like Reynolds revealed his harsh personality. His personal life was complicated. He had many partners, and there were rumors about an addiction. He married actress Anna Cashfee, but shortly after began an affair with his co-star Rita Moreno, which lasted more than 8 years. During this period, Brando also married Mexican-American actress Mita Castaneda and a Polynesian actress. 2 years by the end, he had 16 known children from his marriages and different relationships, and some think there might be more. Sadly, like his own father, Brando was not very involved in his kids' lives. The success of The Godfather allowed him to live comfortably, but he decided to continue acting. In his last finished film, The Score, his acting was praised, but in 2001, Brando was hospitalized for pneumonia. 3 years later, he signed up with director Rita Bay to work on a project called Brando and Brando. He was still working on the script up until a week before his death. Brando passed away in 2004 from respiratory failure due to pulmonary fibrosis and congestive heart failure at the UCLA Medical Center. The cause of death was initially kept private for confidentiality reasons. He also had diabetes. And cancer, Marlon Brando cemented his place as one of Hollywood's greatest figures yet. His life was hard for him with personal problems and work challenges. Fans remember him as a great hero, and some of his colleagues see him that way too. However, there are others who aren't very fond of him as a person.